Welcome to Tales of Resilience, a podcast honoring the heart behind animal rescue. I'm your host, Jolene Feeney, a mental health therapist, lifelong animal lover, and founder of Zodipaws and Animal Rescue Hub. This is a space for real conversations with the people who care for animals when no one else can. From shelter teams and wildlife rehabbers to transporters, vet techs, and nonprofit leaders. We talk about the joy, the grief, the burnout, and the moments that remind us why we keep showing up. Whether you've lived this work or just want to understand it more deeply, thank you for listening. Let's get into today's story. This episode may include references of animal suffering and death, as well as themes of mental health, including suicide. Welcome to Tales of Resilience. I'm your host, Jolene, and today I'm joined by Kristen McNab, founder and executive director of Rewild Refuge Farm Sanctuary in Kingston, Washington. Rewild is a vegan nonprofit dedicated to rescuing and providing lifelong care to farmed animals who have faced neglect, abuse, or displacement. But their mission doesn't stop there. Through the Pathways program, Kristen and her team extend that healing to people as well, offering equine-assisted learning sessions that foster emotional resilience, self-awareness, and connection. As a certified equine and animal-assisted learning and development practitioner trained through the Roots Institute, Kristen brings a deeply compassionate and trauma-informed approach to her work. Her journey from a lifelong horse lover to a late-diagnosed neurodivergent advocate who found healing through the quiet wisdom of animals has shaped the sanctuary's mission to honor mutual healing between humans and animals alike. Welcome, Kristen, and thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be able to have this opportunity.
Yes, perfect. And it sounds like resiliency is an aligned message for both of us, so I'm excited to get into that. I usually like to start with just kind of understanding more about Rewild Refuge Farm Sanctuary, what you guys are about, what you've been up to, things that you're proud of, and then we'll kind of talk more about you.
Yeah. Gosh, feels like it's been such a long journey, but it's only been a few short years. Yeah, as you mentioned, we provide lifelong sanctuary to abused, abandoned, and neglected farm animals, and also offer equine and animal assisted healing programs. And yeah, it's been quite the evolution. So a little bit, I guess, about my background and story and what led us to all of this. Um, Even as a child, I was really into helping animals. I used to save birds and frogs, and um, I even smuggled a puppy across the Mexican border when I was in high school. Um, so I was kind of always felt just this connection with animals, even from a really young age. And I grew up riding horses, up until I was about 15. My family owned a couple horses. We were just casual riders, nothing competitive or anything. Um, but I always loved being with the horses. And I took a really long break from the equine world, about 15 years. And when I met my husband in San Francisco, we decided to move up to Oregon, just for a change of pace and the opportunity to be able to buy our own property and things like that. And I had always sort of joked around or, had the idea that I wanted to have a dog rescue, have a small piece of land where we could rescue dogs and adopt them out. Um, and then all of that shifted in 2017 when I met my horse, Charlie. It was really kind of a serendipitous meeting, I feel like, looking back now. Um, I had mentioned casually in passing to my husband as we were moving up to Portland that I felt like there might be an opportunity up here to get back into working with horses in some capacity. And I think within a week of us moving, we met my neighbor who happened to have her own horse at a local barn, and she offered to take me out there, and um, I met Charlie, who was a horse that they had just rescued from a feedlot.
Hmm.
And he was being used in a children's lesson program, and he was in really bad shape. He was skin and bones, uh, very shut down, just no life in his eyes, just very, very much going through the motions, not present. Um, and I don't know, there was just something about him. I just absolutely fell in love with him. I felt like he needed me, I needed him. Um, and I was able to eventually convince the lady who owned him to let me take him and rehab him. So that process of rehabilitating Charlie really led me down a path of learning about new ways of horsemanship, new ways of horse husbandry, um, ways that were better for the horses, outside of the typical sort of cowboy mentality. Um, I also started to learn about the horse slaughter pipeline, livestock auctions, just really the terrible underbelly of what happens to our horses. And spent some time at a really big sanctuary out in Eastern Oregon, Sky Dog Sanctuary. They primarily focus on rescuing wild Mustangs, and really found a connection with the plight of our wild Mustangs. Um, and we decided that, maybe let's buy a property. And at that point, I wanted to start rescuing horses. My plan was to rehabilitate them using like positive reinforcement training methods, which is what I was had been using to rehabilitate Charlie. And he had an amazing, amazing turnaround. He went from being this shut down, vacant horse to being one of the most hysterical, lively, active, bossy horses you can imagine. Um, and and he's still with us today, which is incredible because
Nice.
he's well into his 30s now. Um, but yeah, he was sort of the impetus to launching all of this. My husband and I moved to a property outside of Portland in 2019 and started our own horse boarding facility, um, sort of as like a trial run. It was like a non-committal way to throw him into being with horses 24/7 and caring for them. And um, he was a city boy. He'd never even been around horses, so this was all very new to him. But we ended up loving it and really started to grow what became Rewild Refuge during COVID. Um, that vision shifted a little bit. I really wanted to focus on horses, but financial constraints, COVID, there are all sorts of factors at play. But an opportunity came up for us to rescue three little pigs out of a really, really terrible neglect situation. So we went for it. We knew nothing about pigs, and had some mentorship along the way, and that really started um, just this passion for helping animals in need and learning and growing with them. And it's been such a fun, wild, crazy ride up to this point. Um, we did purchase our own property in Northwest Washington in 2022 that is now the site of the Rewild Refuge facility. Um, and since moving here, we've rescued, I think, close to 30 large farm animals. So we've got goats, sheep, um, horses, of course, mini donkeys, mini horse, and lots of little pigs. So, yeah.
Very fun, I would imagine, in certain ways. It sounds like there was quite a bit of learning that you had to do. And I'm curious, like, you see Charlie, this initial horse that's
Yeah.
skin and bone, that's suffering. Did you know what to do to help this horse, or were you just like, I'm going to do it and I'm going to figure out how?
I did not know anything about rehabilitating a horse at that time. he needed both physical rehabilitation as well as emotional rehabilitation. Um, I did partner with a positive reinforcement trainer out of Texas because I knew that my approach that I wanted to take was a really gentle, positive, no pressure kind of approach that was going to be fun for him and build trust between us. So she was really, really helpful along the way. And, lots of online research, of course, and even asking questions, to people around the barn. I mean, I knew nothing. Like I didn't know what kind of blankets he needed to wear during winter. Did he need horseshoes? Could he be barefoot? What was he supposed to be eating? How much is he supposed to be eating? When is he supposed to be eating? Um, yeah, it was all, sort of day by day, putting the pieces together. I read a lot of books. Um, and just, yeah, it was a year of just like really intensive learning and
Mm.
driving an hour round trip to see him every single day. Um, him and I used to we would just go, they had a huge, beautiful indoor arena. Um, and him and I would just run and play, and he would chase me, and we just had the best time. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's really amazing. Well, it's incredible too to just see a need and decide you're going to fill it without without any know-how,
Yeah,
but you figured it out through
yeah.
connections and community and just using those resources. So that's very amazing. And yeah, you mentioned the property as it is right now, which I believe is in the San Juan Island area. Or is it near there or?
So we're right off the Puget Sound, in Kingston, Washington, which is pretty much the last ferry stop before you get up into the islands.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
We're on the tip of the peninsula.
Yeah, that's an interesting location. Was that
Yeah.
just because there was a property available there, or is that a desirable location for you?
Yeah, we were looking everywhere along the Pacific Northwest corridor for some land. And this was in like late 2021 into 22, and the housing market was very, very tough. We had put an offer on a house in central Washington and were outbid. And it was truly just like happenstance that we found this place. The day I saw this property, they actually took it off the market like an
Mhm.
hour later. By the time I saw it online and sent it to my realtor, by the time she pulled it up, it had been taken off the market. But it was a temporary pull, and she reached out to the owners and they agreed to let us come look at it. We had no idea this area completely foreign to us. We've never been up here. Um, but we came here and saw so much potential. And yeah, he ended up accepting our offer. And I mean, could not be more grateful that we landed where we did. It is such a beautiful place. It's close to everything. It's really in a good spot for volunteers and the therapy
Mhm.
programs. So we really lucked out.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting. I was wondering about access as far as like,
Yeah.
what's available to you because it is, yeah, a
Yes.
little off the beaten path in some ways. So yeah.
Yeah, it is and it isn't. We
Mm.
are really lucky. My husband and I were just kind of talking about the property that we had put an offer on that we lost just the other day, and we were commenting about how if we had gotten that place, I don't think anything that we've built thus far would have been possible there.
Mm.
That was not publicly accessible.
Yeah. Yeah. So things have just a way of working out.
They do. They always do.
Yeah,
Always.
absolutely. And how is he adjusting then from being a city boy to working with all of these animals with you?
Yeah, he loves it. He's the sheep whisperer. He absolutely loves the sheep. Um, he does a lot of the heavy lifting when needed. Both of us work full-time jobs, so he's generally pretty busy. But he loves it. He loves the animals. He he loves being able to spend time with them. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean he's from the day I met him, he was a huge animal lover, so
Mhm. Mhm.
seemed fitting.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great. That's really great. Um, Well, as you've been adapting and building this refuge for these animals, you also have your Pathways program, which sounds
Yeah.
like it's kind of getting off the ground in this moment. Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah. Um, so it's kind of interesting. One of the things that happened while I was in the process of rehabilitating Charlie all those years ago is I read quite a few books about equine therapy and the impact that it can have. And not only with my time with Charlie, but with other horses that we worked with at our boarding facility, um, I personally found a ton of healing in being with them. And I just felt like we have a real opportunity here to not just help animals, but also help people as well. And I was sort of waiting for the right time for that. I didn't really know what that path forward was going to look like. Um, I didn't go to school for psychology or psychiatry, and at this point in life, I didn't have the time to do that either. So I just wasn't sure how that was going to take place. And then when we moved here up into Washington, I found that a local animal sanctuary is actually a licensed provider of equine assisted learning. And I immediately reached out and I was like, this is it. This is the path forward. So they weren't hosting any programs the first year we moved here, or the second year we moved here, actually. And so just finally in 2023, I was able to join their cohort. So from 2023 to 2024, I was part of their certification program, graduated in May of this year, um, and started building out the program and what that's going to look like. So equine assisted learning, it's really a hands-on approach to developing life skills through guided interactions with horses. It's a very experiential learning type of healing modality. It's typically takes place on the ground. Riding can be involved, but generally it's groundwork. Um, so activities like grooming the horses or leading them or playing certain games with a focus on building personal and interpersonal skills like communication, confidence, leadership, emotional regulation, somatic healing, somatic regulation, are really all a part of what Pathways is about. Um, so we are live. It is officially launched, but we're kind of slow rolling it into next spring and summer. We will be finally launching workshops, um, individual sessions, as well as youth programs. So really kind of taking the winter to get everything in place and be ready to go once rainy season's over.
Yeah, nice, very good. And do you have like a group of people that you are hoping to kind of bring into that program?
Yeah, we will definitely have a focus on youth, um, but certainly also ADHD and autism and neurodivergent individuals, mainly because I am one, and so I have such a, connection to that world, and I know how powerful working with the animals can be
Mhm.
for us neurodivergent folks. I would also really love to create a program for veterans. And then we'll also probably be doing corporate workshops, corporate leadership workshops. We're very close to Seattle. Um, so it's an easy day trip to come out here and do a workshop. So
Yeah.
yeah, really, really excited, not only for that, but I think just we live in a world right now where most of us spend a lot of time on screens and
Mhm.
a lot of our communication is through screens. A lot of people don't really have much of a reason to go outdoors and be outside. So I really think that we have a beautiful opportunity here to bring people out, give them opportunities to connect, have face-to-face conversations, be with the animals, be out in nature. Um, but I just think people are really craving that right now.
So
So
yeah,
yeah, really
yeah,
excited for that.
that's awesome. Great. Well, I'm sure it will be very impactful and popular when you get that kind of going in the springtime. I know that I was a part of opening up a drug and alcohol rehab a
Oh,
handful of
great.
years ago. And part of that was getting some equine therapy set up for the residents. And
Yeah.
it was really great because we got to Me and a couple other directors who were working on getting that going got to go and really understand what some of that therapy process would look like. It was really great, very impactful, really
Is
interesting to, read the horse, and
mhm.
understand, you talked about the emotional regulation, how your energy impacts another animal's energy, how to
Yeah.
feed a large animal like that, which is
Yes.
fascinating. So, yeah,
Yeah,
there's so much value in that. That's really great.
there really is. It's beautiful to see the impact for others.
Hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. So your initial goal was to focus solely on the horses, and then obviously it expanded to many other farm animals.
Mhm.
Um, but specifically related to the horses, and then you can certainly expand it to the other animals, of course. But I'm curious, like when people think about horse rescue or even horse sanctuaries, what do you think they don't understand, or what do you think they don't understand just in general about what happens to horses?
Yeah. Oh, that's a heavy one and it could go deep, but um horses, in my opinion, are some of the most widely accepted animals that are subject to abuse. They're treated as a commodity. Um, they're looked at as if I can't ride my horse any longer, then that's just another expensive mouth to feed. I can't keep them. Uh, they're often mistreated. They're often thrown away, um, especially senior horses, which is a real soft spot of mine as we have a couple senior horses. Um, People don't realize that the horse slaughter industry is very active in the United States. It was outlawed. Horse slaughter facilities are not legal in the United States anymore, but they are legal in Mexico and Canada. And so horses that go to auctions that are not purchased, there are what are called kill buyers that are at these auctions that purchase the horses for about $1 per pound, and they are sold to these slaughter facilities. Um, and it's a really horrific ending for these horses. And it's happening to our wild horses, happens to our domestic horses that have spent their whole life being loved and cherished and cared for, and then get thrown away someday and then end up in this unimaginably horrific situation. Um, it's just heartbreaking. It's truly heartbreaking. Um, there are some uh, government policies right now that are being pushed, like the SAFE Act, where they're trying to stop American horses from being shipped to slaughter facilities in other countries. A lot of people don't realize that horse meat is still a very popular uh, food in a lot
Mm-hmm.
of countries. It's shipped overseas to Japan. It goes into France. So and it's unregulated. Um, Horses with all sorts of vaccines or medications in their systems are slaughtered and turned into meat and shipped to these other countries to be consumed. And um, it's something that's not talked about, in my opinion, by the equestrian community enough. And my thought on that is that equestrians in general are typically very tender-hearted when it comes to horses. It's almost like they can't handle
Mm-hmm.
thinking about that or looking at that reality. And so it's really swept under the rug. Um, and it does a disservice to the horses. It should be talked about. It should be something that we're all being very open and blunt about so that people understand. Yeah, I mean, I can't even tell you how many times, if in conversations or through social media, if I've mentioned horse slaughter, I always get comments from people saying, I didn't even know horse slaughter was a thing. It's very much an underbelly and it's a huge business,
Wow.
um, unfortunately. So, yeah, sanctuaries are typically trying to keep animals out of that situation, um, or at least out of abusive situations that could, ultimately land them at an auction and at a kill pen. Um, and I think it's also worth noting there are also some rescues out there that actively prey on people's knowledge of the horse slaughter industry
Mm.
to fundraise. They'll go to auctions and put out these, this horse is shipping to slaughter in 4 hours. We need to raise X amount of money to save this horse. They really play and prey on people's emotions.
Yeah.
But if you dig deep into where those horses are actually going, it's not always much better. So I will say, if you are someone that donates to a rescue or a sanctuary, please do your homework. Know who you're donating to. Know where the animals are going. Please make sure that they are transparent and legitimate.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've seen those videos. I mean, I can think of a rescue off the top of my head that shows a lot of that imagery,
Yeah.
and there's a
Mhm.
lot of emotion behind it, and
Yes, of course.
it is compelling. So yeah, that's an interesting thing to contemplate and make sure you do your research, which I think is good in general. If we're talking about any kind of rescue or
Hmm.
shelter, sanctuary, just making sure
Yes.
like you've got some good faith actors that you're supporting.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that insight. I know I'm sure it is unpleasant to talk about, but like you said, it's something that probably needs to be understood. I'm
Yeah.
curious, um, if that bill goes through and says, okay, yeah, you can't export these horses to these other countries.
Hmm.
What do you think happens? So, I mean, people's behavior obviously is difficult to change. So, I'm sure that there are people who are still mistreating animals, that are still discarding animals. What do you see happening if that bill passes?
Yeah. I mean, there would definitely have to be a really big lean on adoption, sanctuaries, responsible rehoming. Um, I that is definitely part of the problem is where do they all go?
Yeah,
Um, the reality is horses are very expensive to keep. Um, and there are, as in any animal industry, irresponsible breeders out there. Um, so yeah, I would hope that maybe the government would support some animal welfare organizations, try and find ways, offering grants to sanctuaries, things like that, that could take on those animals and support them.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, hopefully that all unfolds in the best way possible. But I know it's often a long
Yeah,
road for impactful change. So,
it is.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so obviously, when people are running, supporting a part of these animal rescues and sanctuaries, it's really like a 24-hour job. I mean, these are living beings that you have to be responsible for. You and your husband both have full-time jobs that you are working. How does that work? How do you balance that? How do you take care of yourself? How do you take care of the relationship? What does that look like?
Yeah, I ask myself that a lot too. I don't think I have it figured out yet.
Mhm.
Um, I sort of have like a hierarchy of needs, and that the animals' health, safety, happiness is always number one. My job is number two, because without that, this place won't exist.
Yeah.
And then everything else sort of shuffles in behind that. Um, we do have a really incredible team of volunteers and board members that we could not do this without them. So their help is, of course, crucial to keeping the ship afloat. Um, and some weeks are harder than others. We're just coming out of a pretty rough stretch for myself personally of, I don't know, probably a couple months of really high stress, a lot of animal emergencies,
Mhm.
a new rescue intake, um, where, towards the end I was pretty frazzled. So I am good at recognizing when I need to shift gears and take care of myself. Um, and I'm good at seizing that opportunity when I can,
Yeah.
for sure. It doesn't always mean I can do it when I want to do it, but as soon as
Mhm.
I'm able to, I do take some time to read and cook and try and slow down and take care of my nervous system.
Yeah.
And yeah, sometimes our days are chaotic. Sometimes it's like running from a meeting to running outside to, fill waters real quick and then back into work for a meeting. And, um, I would love to say that we're like super regimented and organized and structured throughout our days, but like, okay, from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m., we take care of all the animals and get everything set up for the entire day. And then from 8 a.m. to 5, we're at our desks working and then back out to the farm. But it's, I think part of my ADHD is that have a hard time having a structured setup like that. So there is a lot of back and forth. But on the plus side, it's good because I can only be in meetings and stare at my screen for so long.
Yeah.
So it's like I really cherish that I am able to step away and go outside and be with the animals and be in the fresh air and get some physical movement in. So, that part is really good.
Yeah, you
Um,
get kind of grounding breaks.
yeah, it really is helpful.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, we just sort of make it work.
Yeah. Yeah. You figure out your systems, even if they're inconsistent
Mhm.
at times, but you figure it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. We have
Yeah.
inconsistent systems that still work.
Yeah, exactly. How do you know, like, what are your physical, emotional, or mental signs that you are like a little maxed out or getting burnt out? Like, how do you know that? What do you notice
Yeah.
in yourself?
Uh, my capacity to mentally process things starts to become diminished. Like I sort of start mentally checking out. Like my husband will tell me something really important and I will retain none of it. Um, I can almost equate it to sort of like, your cup is just like overflowing and like at its absolute capacity and there's no room for anything else.
Yeah.
Um, that's when I know I'm really, really starting to get burnt out. Physically, I'm typically able to push through.
Mm-hmm.
There are days when I feel like I'm having to truly just, with every ounce of my being, just keep moving forward. Like every step is difficult. There are those days. Um, but for me, I think it's sort of the mental and emotional shutdown that happens when I'm really burnt out.
Yeah.
And I just don't have the capacity to manage everything that I need to manage.
Mm-hmm. When you get to that space, and I hear what you were saying is you look for those opportunities and you do like these really um, kind of regenerative sort of things where you're reading and cooking and just taking some time. Is this also a time where you find yourself leaning on those volunteers or kind of asking for help a little more, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I definitely have in the past. I think a lot of my burden is that not only do I participate in, the on the ground chores day to day, but I also have a very demanding corporate job that has a lot of moving parts. And then on top of that, I'm executive director and also the director of operations for Rewild. So it's really the mental load for me that becomes cumbersome. And that I'm just not able to do it all. There's fundraising and social media and answering emails, and I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I do all of our website design, all of our graphic design, all of it. So our newsletter. But I am in the process right now of we've just had a new board member join us, and so she is likely going to be taking on some of these director of operations functions, which will be really, really helpful. Finally, finally trying to figure out how to offload some of this and get some of my brain back.
Absolutely. That's great. I was going to ask if there are opportunities to, yeah, build in more kind of delegation, I guess, for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Yeah, and it's I've tried in the past, but it's tough. We're a completely volunteer run organization, so nobody here takes a salary of any kind, and it's a lot to ask somebody to step in and take on some of this tougher stuff behind the scenes,
Yeah.
on a volunteer basis. So I'm
Yeah.
really, really grateful that we found someone that is excited to do that. And
Yeah, I think that's what it takes, right? Finding the people who are
yeah,
holding a similar amount of excitement and passion to just
yeah,
want to do it, not for any
yeah,
monetary benefit,
yeah,
but just know that
yeah,
you're contributing in some way.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's lovely. Well, obviously the podcast is about resilience, and so I'm certainly hearing, right, the necessity for it.
Yeah.
How do you define resiliency? How would you explain that to someone?
I think resilience to me is also grit. It's learning to ride the waves. It's learning that it's okay to fall apart or grieve, but also knowing that nothing lasts forever, both the good and the bad. Um, I think it's pushing forward in moments when you aren't sure you can, but you do and you overcome. Um, but then also being able to soak in those moments of quiet and sit in gratitude and know that, nothing lasts forever. Everything comes in waves and we can and will get through this.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think that's so important. Just have that faith and know that yeah, nothing really is forever, that there will be
Yeah.
a moment of relief, even if it's just a moment
Hmm.
in time, right? But
Hmm.
it doesn't last. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You brought up that idea of that kind of wavering, like, can I do this or can I hang in there? How often do you kind of notice that coming up for you? And is it just knowing that it's temporary that allows you to kind of move through that? Or what does it take to get beyond
Yeah.
that worry or exhaustion or whatever compels that thought?
I feel like it happens like every few months or so. It'll kind of creep up on me. I'll have those moments of like, what have I gotten myself into?
Mhm.
Um, but it's those moments where I'm able to go out into the barn and watch, our pigs like in the grass, wagging their tails, knowing that most of them wouldn't be here if they weren't here.
Yeah.
Um, or watching our sheep sunbathing. Um, I had this exact moment a couple days ago. I shared it on our Patreon account because the last few weeks have been so stressful. I haven't even been able to really spend time with the animals, and I start to miss them, even though I'm with them every day, but I'm not able to have that present time with them.
Yeah.
And it felt the other day like finally the fog was lifting and the sun was shining, and I got to go outside and sit with my sheep, and they were just laying there with their faces up to the sun, almost smiling. And those are the moments that I'm able to breathe, and it just reminds me of why we do this and why we work so hard. And it makes it all worth it.
Absolutely. I can imagine that those moments and those reflections are incredibly gratifying and motivating. Like you just have to keep doing it for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned the sunshine, but we're also, known for losing a lot of sunshine as the winter months come in.
Yeah.
How does this weather change, the fall, the winter? How does that impact the work and what would you like people to know about that?
Yeah. So the seasons while running a farm are so interesting. Um, every season brings its own challenges and its own, positive things. Um, I always look forward to summer, but I actually am not a fan of summer. Um, the summer days are very long. We are often out working until 9, 10 p.m. So we don't really have, or I don't have that time to just sit and like relax and shut off my brain because
Mhm.
there's always something to be doing outside because
Yeah.
the sun's out till 10:30 at night. So summer for me becomes very exhausting from that standpoint. I really enjoy the transition from fall into winter. It's to me a time to slow down. Our days are shorter. The animals are in bed, closed up for the night by like 6 or 7, and I'm able to have, a few hours to enjoy my dinner and relax and rest. So that's really nice. The rainy season, of course, um, brings its challenges. We've got the cold. We have a lot of senior animals that the cold impacts. Um, Keeping everybody warm is like top priority.
Mhm.
So there does tend to be, I think, a little more physical work on the ground, but the opportunity to rest after that is longer.
Yeah.
So in some ways, it doesn't feel so difficult. Um, but yeah, I mean, the winter doesn't get to me as much as I think it could. I think because regardless of the weather, we have to be outside, we have to be moving.
Yeah.
We don't really have the opportunity to sit in the house and develop like seasonal depression. Like, we've got stuff to do. So that helps a lot. Um, but yeah, every season's different. Every season brings things that we don't expect that we kind of roll with. We try and prepare for each incoming winter with things that we learned the prior winter, just
Mhm.
to make everyone's lives easier. So that's always kind of a fun challenge to tackle and see how it pans out over winter. Um, yeah, it's a ride, quite a
Yeah.
ride.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, and I think that's also, as you say, a fun challenge. I thought, well, that's probably a component of resiliency too, right? Being able to
Yeah,
see it as a challenge, but something to overcome and feel good about overcoming it.
yeah. I mean, I live for improvements. I love making improvements around the sanctuary. I love when I like have an idea and implement it and it actually works.
Yeah.
Um, that just feels so good. And I think part of the fun of being a part of a sanctuary is you are always learning, you're always trying new things.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But like thinking through the logistics of things is fun, and being able to kind of get creative with the space that we have is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really enjoy that aspect.
That's great. You're kind of built for this then.
I guess so, because
Yeah.
yeah, from day one, I've really enjoyed that aspect.
Yeah, that's awesome. When you think about, so obviously you spoke about Charlie and kind of the evolution of that and witnessing his resilience in coming from a really vulnerable place to this place where he's thriving and enjoying life and having fun and being goofy. Um, are there other stories of resilience that's been really impactful as far as the animals go, things that really stand out?
Yeah, yeah, I would say I think probably one of our more known publicly and then also just internally with our team story is about our pig Morty. Um, so we rescued him, I guess, about 3 years ago. I Someone reached out to me on Facebook and sent me a post that this woman was sharing that she needed to rehome her pig and didn't care who took him, if they wanted to take him as a pet or if they wanted him to be bacon. She just wanted him out of her house. And he'd been attacking her kids and her mother-in-law. And someone in the comments had said, I'll come pick him up tomorrow and take him to the butcher.
Mm,
And I don't know, there was just something about that he had been a house pig for the first couple years of his life and then had been thrown outside by himself. I think he had a turkey friend, but he was more or less by himself. Um, and he was having this reaction to his environment, his situation. Pigs are very, very emotional creatures. They're highly intelligent. Um, And so it had sort of snowballed where he was angry and unhappy about his situation. At some point, she had 9 kids. The kids were kicking him and
Mm,
abusing him. And so one of my board members, Greg, went and rented a van and drove 10 hours round trip to California that day. You would think we're
wow.
going to pick up this pig. Um, and we got him home. And again, we were really new. We had only rescued our first 3 little pigs who were just the sweetest, most loving, like darling little pigs. We were all just so head over heels in love with those girls. And here we brought in this 220-pound, severely obese, angry, depressed animal. And
Mhm.
he was reactive, he was aggressive, um, he was scary. You know, we didn't know what we were doing, and he was a whole lot of angry pig to handle. Um, so that was a rehabilitation and learning process for us from that aspect. Um, but I had faith that as he settled in and knew that he was safe and started to learn that no one here is going to hurt me, I just held the faith that he would come around. He never met another pig in his life, so
Wow.
that was also an interesting dynamic.
Hmm.
Um, Obviously, we had to keep our other pigs safe, so that was a little nerve-wracking. He had his own separate pen for, I don't know, 6 to 9 months, I think. He did start to come around. He did start to, let us pet him. But I mean, even today, I still get, he hasn't charged at me for a long time, but he moves quick and he's got
Yeah.
sharp teeth and he would just come after us. So the real turning point, I think, was when we moved up here. We had loaded him into our van and there was a divider in the van to keep him separate from the other pigs because we had not introduced him to the pigs yet. We just like weren't feeling brave enough to go there yet. And 5 minutes into the drive up to Washington, we turned around and he had somehow knocked over or gotten past the divide
Yeah.
and was sleeping with the other pigs. And we were just like, oh, like that's so sweet. So we started to see these glimpses of, you know, who he really was and the pig that we knew he was eventually going to become. Yeah, and he, over the course of a couple years, lost a bunch of weight, got healthy. And today he's just, I will say we don't allow strangers to be around him.
Hmm.
He still has a lot of trauma around shoes that he doesn't recognize.
Sure.
So he will lunge at people's feet that he doesn't know. But to those that he's close with, which is really just me and our board member Greg, um, he's just the happiest boy. He's
Mm.
very chatty. He loves to talk to us. Um, he loves to come up to us and smile and wag his tail. And I mean, he's just a completely different animal
Yeah.
from the animal that we rescued. So really just love that boy and so proud of the progress he's made. In fact, last night I went to put the pigs to bed and he was sleeping in because they all have their own individual rooms, and he's always slept alone by choice. But he was actually snuggled up with 4 of our other pigs. I have never seen him do that before.
I think I saw
Um,
that photo on your Instagram.
yeah.
Yeah.
So even today, even after all this time, we do still see, some things from him that are new and surprising and show us the growth
Yeah.
process that he's still going through.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. How long have you guys had him then?
It's either 3 or 4 years.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
might be 4.
Yeah.
So we've had him a while. Yeah, and he's still showing us that there's some more growth to be had.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think, you talked about just the intelligence and the emotional components of pigs in particular. And I've talked to other people who either just solely do pig rescues or do farm, and yeah, pigs are really fascinating in that way. And I think, much like a human going through so much trauma,
Yeah.
it really takes a lot of time, right? And there's a lot of patience that you have to patience and compassion to share with other people who've been through trauma and know that
Hmm.
it takes time, and it doesn't even mean that someone's going to be like ever completely healed, right? Like
Yeah,
it
yeah,
sounds like he'll probably,
yeah,
who knows how long, I mean, maybe never be comfortable with unfamiliar people,
yeah,
and it's hard to know that,
yeah.
but you just, like you said, you don't give up and you look for the wins and be excited
Mhm.
for who he develops into, and that's very sweet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, thank you for sharing his story and continue
Yeah,
to share. It sounds like I'm
yeah,
sure your followers get pretty attached to the animals that you get to highlight and show.
yeah, yeah, they do. Morty's always been a favorite from day one because
Yeah.
a lot of people that followed us got to watch his transformation and his glow up. So
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
that's a great way to put it. Yeah. Well, speaking of supporters, it sounds like you've got great volunteers at your side, and a very helpful board, which is awesome. And obviously, online supporters who show up as they can for you. Um,
Yeah.
how can people continue to support the work that you're doing, the volunteers that are there? How can they support Rewild?
Yeah. Um, I mean, funding is always, always, always a need.
Mhm.
Our monthly supporters, either, through a monthly subscription via our website or a monthly subscription on our Patreon account, are everything because that allows us to know, like, okay, this amount of funding is coming in every month and we can use that to plan. Um, Obviously, emergencies and things come up, but um, yeah, funding is everything. Sharing our posts, sharing our story, is always super helpful for those who can't, donate monetarily. Um, yeah, we're still a young organization trying to operate in a pretty terrible economy. Um, we've been very cognizant of our growth and making sure that we didn't take on more than we could.
Mhm.
We don't want to be one of those really sad situations of sanctuaries that end up having to close. Um, but yeah, I mean, funding is always a struggle. It's just such a terrible economy. And I know many, many, many small sanctuaries or newer sanctuaries are in that position.
Mhm.
Um, you know, wish and hope, and maybe one day we'll be one of those larger organizations with like corporate donors and,
Mhm.
big grants coming in. And, we obviously dream of that so we can expand and continue to grow out the property and um, help, not only people, but animals, but people as well. But yeah, I think, just sort of follow us and keep an eye on us. And if there's ways that they feel like they can jump in and help, uh, every every dollar goes to the animals.
Yeah.
So it truly matters. It truly impacts what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to the Patreon, because it seems like there's a lot of rescues and sanctuaries who are leaning into
Mhm.
Patreon as a way to generate that monthly income. What does that look like for
Yeah,
what you guys do?
yeah. You know, Patreon has been not only really awesome as like a platform that can manage, monthly contributions, but we also have a little community built there. So, I post on there as often as I can. I post behind the scenes stuff, rescue updates, emergency updates, um, funny things that might be happening around the sanctuary. I post a lot of like videos just of me, talking to our patrons. But people can comment, of course, and so we've got a pretty regular, community there of folks that comment and that we interact with together. So it does feel like a little family. I've spent a lot of time creating content for social media, to build our following and things like that. But I feel like the people that pay for our content and behind the scenes stuff, should sort of be the first to get, the updates and the cool stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, and it's been really helpful. And I know some sanctuaries rely solely on Patreon to stay afloat.
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's really incredible. So yeah, if anyone likes our social media content, likes our animals, likes our stories, I mean, that is a really easy way to stay on, stay on top of what's going on behind the scenes, but also help out the animals at the same time.
Yeah, I love that community aspect and the kind of just a more intimate glimpse about, what's
Yeah.
really happening. And I think, you talked about, a lot of interactions being screened, and obviously this is
Mhm.
too, but I think there's such a deep longing for connection. And I think when we give people the avenue to
Yeah.
build these relationships, right? Even if you don't know the
Yeah.
person, like very personal,
Yeah.
like I think it's really an impactful thing to be able to give to people.
Yeah. And it is for me too, because, I'm generally a little bit more shy. Like I don't like to do like Instagram lives or even really talk to the camera all that much when there's 12,000 strangers potentially looking at it. But with Patreon, it gives me a space to feel really comfortable to be intimate and be myself and just be very vulnerable. I talk about the great days, I talk about the hard days. And so it just feels really nice to have that support over there and that community that like gets it.
Yeah, that's really cool. Very cool. And are you needing more volunteers at this time?
Yeah, I would say we're always entertaining it. We do sort of get to the point sometimes where there's not much for them to do. It depends, it kind of ebbs and flows. But yeah, we generally try to find and onboard volunteers that can commit to like 1 day a week,
Mhm.
um, just so that we can plan and prepare for that with our busy schedules.
Absolutely.
So I know that's tough for a lot of people. We get a lot of requests for, could I just come out and volunteer for a day? Which I totally understand. And if I were in their shoes, I'd be asking the same thing. It's just so difficult to train somebody or shadow them or put in the time to spend the
Yeah.
time with them. They have to stay safe. They have to know where everything is. Like, so it's really tough for us to do those like one-off, days. But yeah, if there's anyone out there that's feels like they're in a position to commit to coming out to a sanctuary once a week for,
Yeah.
the next 6 months or so, we'll find something to do. I always
Yeah.
joke there's always poop to pick up. Always.
That's true. That's fair.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you saying that about just, the work that goes into, setting up uh, a volunteer, especially for success
Yeah.
for them, but also for the organization and for the animals. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's I hear what you're saying too. Like it makes sense that people want to just come out, and it is hard,
Hmm.
for whatever reason, for many people to commit right to a
Yeah.
regular
Yeah.
thing. But yes, I think it's important to also highlight why that's very challenging as an organization to give that to people.
Yeah. If we were a larger organization with, a staff that could be dedicated to, working side by side with volunteers that just want to come out for here and there, I would be so open to that, but we're just not
Yeah.
there yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think you've given a lot of people several different avenues to support you, and hopefully we can continue to get the word out and keep
Yeah.
funneling funds and interest your way to keep the work going that you're doing. And I'll look forward to see how that Pathways program opens up for you guys. That sounds really
Yeah.
promising as well.
I'm very excited. It's
Yeah.
going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Well, Kristen, I really appreciate your time today. I do know that you are a very busy person, so for carving out time, I really appreciate it. And thank you to
Of
you
course.
and all of your board members and volunteers for doing the important work that you're doing.
And thank you so much for giving us this platform to share about what we do.
Pleasure, for sure. Thank you again to Kristen McNab of Rewild Refuge Farm Sanctuary for sharing her story. If you were moved by this episode, share it with a friend, like, subscribe, follow us on Instagram at animal.rescuehub, and until next time, may we all find our own tale of resilience. for joining us on Tales of Resilience. If today's story moved you, reminded you of your own path, or gave you something to think about, please consider sharing this episode with someone else who cares. You can follow us on Instagram at zodi.pause and animal.rescuehub to stay connected, or visit zodipause.com or animalrescuehub.org to learn more about both of these organizations. And you can also email us directly at info@animalrescuehub.org. And if you or someone you know has a story worth sharing, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, be kind to yourself and never underestimate the power of a tale and a little resilience.